We're entering the last big block of training for your first triathlon. You've come a long way, so it's time to start mixing things up a little and start preparing for the event itself.
We're going to be covering weeks 7 to 10 in part 4 of how to train for your first triathlon series.
As we near the event, the aim is to comfortably increase the length of our swimming reps. You want to do this bit by bit with the ultimate aim by week 10 or a couple of weeks before the event, you're covering the distance of the swim required for your triathlon in one go. So, for instance, an Olympic distance triathlon, you want to do something along the lines of a warm-up of 100 meters front crawl, 100 meters pull, simply to get yourself loosened off in preparation, and then a main set of 1500 meters front crawl, continuous swimming at a comfortable pace, and then warm down with 100 meters choice.
Knowing that you can and have already completed the distance of the swim for your first triathlon, it's going to give you a lot of confidence for your race day. But if you're completing that distance really easily, then you can start thinking about trying to increase your pace and targeting a faster time. So you can put in some speed work into your sessions to start to dial in that pace and work out what you can sustain in a race. So a good starting point would be doing longer reps, doing efforts at race pace alternated with easier parts. So for example, you could do 2 lots of 600 meters, doing 100 meters at your target race pace, followed by 100 meters easy for the whole 600.
It's also time to start thinking about open water swimming if your first triathlon is open water and providing the water temperature is warm enough to swim in. Now, if it is your first time swimming open water, it is totally understandable to be slightly nervous about the idea of it, but there really is nothing to be worried about. Simply head down to your local open water swimming venue where there'll be other swimmers and helpers on hand, and then ease yourself into the water slowly, float around before building up the confidence to swim off. And just start with short loops close to the shore to build up your confidence, and then venture out into longer loops.
So still sticking to 2 swims per week, you simply can replace one of your normal swims with an open water swim. Now, this is a great chance to be able to practice using your kit, such as your tri-suit or your wetsuit. And it's especially worth getting used to swimming in a wetsuit before your race, because it does feel quite different. And I'd also recommend practicing taking it off, because after a hard swim, that can be quite tricky.
And if you can't get into the open water and you really want to try your wetsuit out, then some swimming pools will allow you to swim in a wetsuit. Just check with the swimming pool beforehand and then make sure you thoroughly rinse out the wetsuit afterwards. And of course, if your first triathlon isn't open water, then you can simply jump in the swimming pool in your tri-suit.
For the bike, it's also time to start dialing into the pace that you know you can sustain for your triathlon. On the race day, it's easy to get carried away with adrenaline, but practicing your pace now during your training rides will give you a good idea of that effort level that's required. And then you can use perceived exertion to measure it, or something more technical such as heart rate or even power. And speed can also be useful, but just be aware that if you're riding a hilly course, it will affect the pace.
Try to maintain your 2 rides per week, but now aim to cover the distance of the bike leg for your first triathlon. Now, depending on the length of the triathlon you're entered for, you don't need to do this straight away, but do aim to do it at least once a couple of weeks before the event. Now, do keep in mind our 10% rule when it comes to increasing the length of your rides, so you don't overdo it too soon.
If you haven't done so already, then now's a really good time to go and do a recce of the bike course. Obviously, providing that you don't live too far away and that you've got enough time, it's worth making a trip over there and riding the course, or even part of it if you can. And this will just give you that confidence and put your mind at ease when it comes to race day.
In our last block, we started to introduce brick sessions involving running off the bike. You should aim to continue doing one of these per week off one of your 2 bike sessions. These help to prepare you physically, but they're also a really good opportunity to practice your transitions. And as with the swimming, we suggest trying to practice these with the equipment you're planning to use on race day so that you're fully prepared and used to it.
If you're anything like me, I found transitions in my first triathlon a little bit overwhelming, but it is fairly straightforward if you break it down. So when you come into T1, make sure you put your helmet on before you touch your bike. Make sure you don't get on your bike until you're after that mount line. And then when it comes to T2, make sure you get off your bike before the dismount line and you rack your bike before you take your helmet off. So the simple rules to go by are you can't ride your bike within the transition zone, and if you're ever touching it, just make sure you've got your helmet on.
For the run, we also want to build up to covering the distance required for the triathlon. Again, we should aim to do this at least once a couple of weeks before the event if we haven't already. Now, we're already covering a good distance and duration in our runs, but if you are doing a longer event, then you should only aim to do this once per week.
As we've already mentioned, we've introduced brick sessions, simply running off the bike. Now in the last block, they were simply 10 to 15 minutes in length, but now it's time to increase that length so that you're fully prepared. So as the length increases, you can, instead of doing your 3 runs per week that we were doing previously, drop one of those and make the brick session one of your 2 runs a week.
So now we'll be looking at something along the lines of one 45 to 60 minute run and then a 20 to 30 minute run off the bike. Again, this is all very dependent on the distance of your first triathlon. If you're doing something like a super sprint or sprint distance triathlon, then there's little need to increase the distance by too much. In fact, you can probably stick with the lower end of these durations, but actually maybe increase the intensity and the pace that you're doing them if you're ready to.
On the subject of pace, it's time to start dialing in your desired running pace for your triathlon too. Now you can use an app on your phone or maybe just a website to find out the pace that you want to run at, and then you can put this on your phone and track it that way, or you can go by feel using perceived effort or even running to heart rate. Then it's time to start putting in a few stints of this pace into your training. So a good example would be 4 lots of 5 minutes at your desired race pace with a 5-minute jog recovery.
Of course, don't worry if you're not ready to start increasing the pace. If your main aim is just to complete your first triathlon, that is absolutely fine. It's still a huge achievement. Just continue to build on the training you're already doing and at whatever pace is comfortable for you.
As you near your first triathlon, just make sure you're as fully prepared as you possibly can be and you're not leaving anything to last minute. So try on your kit, practice running off the bike, practice your transitions. Now, it might seem like a lot of information, but triathlon really is a great fun sport and it is straightforward. It just needs a little bit of practice. And if you want some more great videos from GTN, just click on the globe to subscribe. And if you want to watch the earlier videos from this series, then they're all just here. And if you're still trying to choose your first triathlon, there's a video for that right here.